The next item on the agenda is item 13. I'm going to turn it over to our county team for a brief presentation.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Vargas and members of the board. With the support of your board, the county continues to invest in the health and well-being of children and youth, including critical mental health services. Recognizing that crisis treatment is not available to many young people throughout California, especially those in the foster care system, the state recently established a Children's Crisis Continuum pilot program. The County of San Diego was identified as a pilot county to further enhance mental health services and resources for youth in foster care. Today's item requests authorization to accept the state funding allocated within the pilot. With me to discuss the item is Dr. Kimberly Giardina, Director of Child and Family Wellbeing Department. Dr. Giardina.
Thank you, Dr. McDonald, and good afternoon, Chairwoman Vargas and members of the board. Crisis residential care is an essential level of care for the treatment of children and youth in an acute mental health crisis and often serves as an alternative to hospitalization. This level of care is not currently available in San Diego. To address this gap in 2021, AB 153 established the Children's Crisis Continuum Pilot Program as a 5-year program to be implemented by the California Department of Social Services and the California Department of Healthcare Services. The purpose of the Crisis Continuum Pilot Program is to fully integrate the system of care for foster youth, enabling a seamless transition between service settings and to provide stabilization and treatment to foster youth with high acuity needs within the least restrictive setting possible. The County of San Diego is among the 8 counties and regional collaboratives that met the participation criteria and have been notified of preliminary award amounts to participate in the pilot program. In order to develop the pilot, the Office of Child Safety within the Department of Child and Family Wellbeing and collaborative partner, County Behavioral Health Services, engaged various partners in the design and implementation, including the Probation Department, San Diego Regional Center, the County Office of Education, Tribal Nations, Department of Rehabilitation, Promises to Kids, and San Diego Center for Children. The county's pilot will include 16 intensive services foster care beds. Intensive Services Foster Care, or ISFC, homes serve children who require intensive treatment, behavioral supports, and specialized healthcare needs in a home-based family setting. Current and future foster family agencies can opt into the pilot, which will allow for maximum flexibility, utilization, and matching of youth needs to the right resource family. Additionally, the pilot will include 4 crisis stabilization beds. A crisis stabilization unit is a 24-hour healthcare facility that provides emergency behavioral health services to children and adolescents under age 18. Our existing county contracted crisis stabilization unit, known as the Emergency Screening Unit, currently has 12 crisis stabilization beds, and 4 of these will be leveraged for the pilot. Next, the pilot includes a children's crisis residential program with 4 crisis residential beds. Children's crisis residential programs serve children and youth experiencing an acute mental health crisis as an alternative to psychiatric hospitalization. This new short-term residential program will have 24-hour services and a mental health program approved by the Department of Healthcare Services. It is anticipated that in the future, the crisis residential program may be integrated to function as a psychiatric residential treatment facility upon approval by the Department of Healthcare Services. We will explore such options once updated regulations are released and anticipated legislation has been enacted, and will update the board of significant developments. Lastly, the county will provide enhanced care coordination and transition planning for youth in the pilot through the Foster Family Agency Stabilization and Treatment Program. The 4 components of the pilot will be implemented in stages to support the additional planning and collaboration with partners and procurement processes, with the pilot anticipated to be operational in 2024. The county developed a model that ensures a well-coordinated service delivery. The care coordinators will communicate directly with facilities, providers, and social workers to minimize placement changes. And youth will have access to a wide variety of additional resources and care coordination to support them, with activities such as mentoring, family finding, and permanency roundtables to address permanency and locating family. We are committed to gathering, tracking, and providing the California Department of Social Services and Department of Healthcare Services with information regarding the pilot youth progress at set intervals to include the following anticipated outcomes: reducing the number of hospitalizations for youth in the foster care or juvenile justice system, reducing the number of interactions with law enforcement, reducing placement changes, improving permanency outcomes for youth, and increasing familial connections. Today's actions request your board to authorize the acceptance of $8.5 million in Children's Crisis Continuum Pilot Program funds to improve services to youth in the foster care system who are experiencing substance use issues as well as mental health challenges, and authorize the agency director to execute all required grant documents. To authorize competitive solicitations for a children's crisis residential program and a psychiatric residential treatment facility. Authorize applications for additional funding opportunity announcements to improve services to youth in the foster care system who are experiencing high acuity needs. The Children's Crisis Continuum Pilot Program is an exciting step in support of our efforts to respond to the increased need for intensive mental health services by expanding capacity to effectively serve our region's children and youth. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this item. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to public comment.
Thank you, Chairwoman Vargas. We have 4 requests to speak on this item, 1 in person and 3 requesting to speak by phone. Also note that we received 1 e-comment in favor of this item. For any members of the public that requested to speak on item 13 by phone, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. We'll begin with the in-person speaker. The speaker is in opposition of this item. I'd like to invite forward Mark. Not seeing any movement in the chamber, we'll give a moment for the individuals that requested to speak by phone to call into the conference line. We'll begin with our first caller.
Well, it's just interesting that we want to, protect children. It's very important. But when we talk about that and then we do things like we are to them with this whole transgender movement and puberty blockers and taking them away from their parents, if their parents are trying to protect them, you can sit here all you want and act like you're going to help somebody. But I'm going in there. Yeah. And so, you guys really, and even still, it's like protecting kids in schools from gun shootings. Like, you always claim that there isn't any money for that, but we want to, tell children how to act if there is a shooter. So, everything is upside down, and protecting children is extremely important, but it's very sad when we have, an open border and there's things like child trafficking that goes on in these entities of, child welfare and foster care, and, we're doing everything we can to, put children into the hands of very nefarious people. And, you guys sit here and act like you want to protect them. And if you did, then spend the money to put, security in school. Quit pretending like, there isn't enough funds when you guys seem to pull money out of thin air from every which angle and put it into any bucket that you want. So, this looks nice and all, but Satan is a very good liar and makes everything look really good before he takes you right into the abyss. So, people need to pay attention that these things that you guys are doing aren't necessarily really to protect children. It just is, busy work to make it look like you are. But basically, we are spending money to put these children into the hands of pedophiles, child traffickers, drug lords, all of this, all while we have an open border, while we don't want to do anything about that. So you guys need to really start getting your, stuff over center again, because it doesn't matter how much you're...
Thank you. For the record, the speaker is Audra. We'll now hear from the next caller.
Truth. Government crisis care alternatives to hospitals for children experiencing mental health crises. But why are children experiencing mental health issues at this point in history? Very simple answer. The COVID lockdowns, of course. Everything in their lives was disrupted and destroyed. Their school, their friends, their favorite restaurant, their groceries, even basics like toilet paper, their playgrounds, their breathing abilities, their health, their entire futures. Because of you supervisors' decisions to shut down the county, and with every coward who complied, the new generation of children were left with no one to talk to and nowhere to express themselves. Now we have lashings out of all kinds of antisocial behavior from children. But that's because adults have allowed an antisocial county to develop. and the irresponsible parents and teachers tell those children that there's something wrong with them, label them with a cute disease name, and then put them on psychotropic drugs. But maybe I should use Nora's line that she likes to use at Sandag. If you guys don't like what the state's telling you to do, then just contact or run for the legislature. Isn't that a lousy excuse for doing the wrong thing? Or at least it is in the sane world, and the world of the few suffering from serious emotional disturbances and implementing a mental health crisis of junk values and moral violence, as I heard Brando describe it yesterday. It's okay to stay along the same path and keep collecting more state checks as things get worse. These people even have their own anthem. There's a circus center only 5 minutes away from this building, but who needs that when we have BOS? Seriously, it's $8.5 million in state debt dollars to keep selling out the children and the future to the state's psychiatric residential treatment facility for 1 year. Pretty despicable and very expensive. So I'm in opposition. That's what I have to say to this circus show. Don't enjoy it. That's all I got.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the next caller.
Hello, this is Catherine Rhodes, and, this seems like a good idea, but I don't understand exactly how many beds are there going to be funded with this $8.5 million over so many years. At one point you guys say that there's 121 youth who are receiving services in a residential setting, and then there's 37 children at Kalinsky that are awaiting placement. But then you guys also talked about, I saw the numbers of 16 beds somewhere, 4 beds somewhere, 4 beds somewhere else. So exactly how many beds are going to actually be funded with this money? I don't know from your presentation. And then, one thing I did notice that you did discuss, I think, on page 2, it says there were 67,824 children who were abused. But, my one question, since I didn't get any help from the Ombudsman of Child Protective Services, is how many of those children said they were abused, but they were not believed by the county CPS workers? And how many of those children who said they were abused and not believed actually committed suicide? I'm not sure if you saw about that Take Care of Maya, or you saw that new lawsuit that you guys have of CPS basically ignoring children that are being abused. And, children are dying because nobody's taking them seriously when they come to you and say, I'm being abused, and you're basically saying, no, it's not a big deal. It's not actually happening to you. That's gaslighting. And so, my issue is that now I'm going to try to see if I can talk to county council instead of the ombudsman at CPS, because they literally did nothing. Again, they don't believe the child, and so it's going nowhere for my particular issue. And so my big question is here is how many beds are going to be funded with this? Thank you.
Thank you. And Chairwoman Vargas, that concludes public comment on this item.
Thank you so much. I am really thrilled that we're one of 8 counties that are part of this Children's Crisis Continuum pilot program, and I want to thank the team for all their work on this particular issue, and I'm happy to make a motion to support. We have a second. Did you have any comments? Okay, no further it's okay. If there are no further discussions, please go ahead and call the vote.
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson?
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond? Aye. Vice Chair Lawson-Remer?
Aye.
Chairwoman Vargas?
Vargas, aye.
That motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is authorizing the competitive solicitation single source contracts amendments to external existing contracts and cooperative and revenue agreements for behavioral health services. I'm going to turn it over to the team for a presentation.
Thank you, Chairwoman Vargas and members of the board. Our county behavioral health services provides a comprehensive array of mental health and substance use services to people of all ages. On average, these services directly support 105,000 San Diegans each year through county-operated programs and contracts with community service providers. Today's action will authorize the procurement of a range of services which are critical to maintaining and anticipating future needs in the behavioral health system of care. Each of the services and programs included in today's action fulfill a unique function and support your board's priorities to address the needs of our region's most vulnerable residents through data-driven, equitably distributed efforts. I'll now turn it over to Dr. Luke Bergman, Director of County Behavioral Health Services, to provide an overview on the item. Dr. Bergman.
Thank you, Dr. McDonald. Today, we're presenting your board with 4 recommendations, which, if approved, will authorize competitive solicitations, single-source contracts, amendments to extend existing contracts, and cooperative and revenue agreements. If approved, these recommendations will result in approximate costs of $3.7 million in fiscal year 23-24 and $239.6 million in fiscal year 24-25. The programs included in these recommendations support critical behavioral health services that are tailored to vulnerable populations, including individuals who are experiencing homelessness, individuals with justice involvement, and children and youth with complex behavioral health conditions. These programs are integral to our ongoing efforts to build a better behavioral health system for all San Diego County communities. Within Recommendation 1, which requests authority to issue competitive solicitations, we have 46 contracts across 5 categories, including services for children and families, individuals experiencing homelessness, and individuals with justice involvement, residential and outpatient substance use treatment, and support services. Among the programs serving children and families is the Multicultural Community Counseling Program, which provides services tailored to Asian, Pacific Islander, and Latino children and youth up to age 21 across the county. Services are available in multiple languages, including Tagalog, Vietnamese, Spanish, Mandarin, and Korean, and are provided at schools, community sites, and clinics, as well as in person at clients' homes and via telehealth. In fiscal year 21-22, the program served a total of 198 clients. Of those, almost half were discharged and avoided psychiatric hospitalization and transitioned to or remained in a less restrictive educational setting. Contracted programs for individuals experiencing homelessness include one program tailored for women, as well as the Assertive Community Treatment, or ACT program, which includes multiple contracts. The ACT program provides services countywide and supports transition-age youth and older adults with serious mental illness experiencing or at risk of homelessness through a whatever-it-takes model. Another category of programs before your board today is meant to address the needs of individuals with justice involvement. The Jail in Reach program provides services countywide for incarcerated adults with behavioral health needs, with a focus on African American and Latino adults and transition-age youth with serious mental illness. In fiscal year 21-22, the program served a total of 242 clients, 67% of whom were linked to services at discharge. The residential and outpatient substance use treatment programs included in today's item provide services for adults, pregnant and parenting women, transition-age youth, and adolescents. A notable program up for competitive reprocurement is the Community Harm Reduction Treatment Program, or CHART, which provides street outreach and engagement to adults ages 18 years and older experiencing homelessness in the East Village and Midway areas of the city of San Diego who have a chronic substance use condition. Among the support services included in this item is the Faith-Based Behavioral Health Training and Education Academy and Community Education Program. This program facilitates behavioral health awareness and connections to resources within the communities of the North and Central regions and extends behavioral health-related education into congregations and communities that may not otherwise have access to this information. The competitive solicitations requested today represent investments of $1.1 million in fiscal year 23-24 and $150.1 million in fiscal year 24-25. Recommendation 2 in today's action requests authorization to issue 19 single-source contracts for critical behavioral health services. 13 school-based outpatient behavioral health services contracts are included in this recommendation. This program provides culturally competent outpatient behavioral health services countywide at designated schools, in home, community, or office or clinical locations, as well as via telehealth. In collaboration with the school districts, Behavioral Health Services has implemented a system of care tailored to the needs of the students in schools, and that ensures the entities selected to provide services on campuses are the choice of the school districts. Additionally, today's item requests your board authorize a single source contract for a short-term residential therapeutic program, also referred to as an STRTP. STRTPs are residential facilities that provide an integrated program of specialized and intensive care and supervision, services and supports, specialty mental health treatment services, and short-term 24-hour care and supervision to children and youth ages 6 to 21 who've experienced trauma resulting in mental health or substance use conditions. 2 new single-source contracts for which we are requesting your board's approval are for skilled nursing facilities, or SNFs, that provide county-wide services. These facilities provide specialized mental health services and services for clients who have a severe psychiatric impairment and whose adaptive functioning is moderately impaired. Additionally, we're requesting your board authorize 2 single-source contracts for psychiatric inpatient hospital services. Services are provided county-wide to adults ages 18 years and older adults with acute symptoms who need 24-hour observation and intensive treatment. Finally, we're requesting 1 single-source contract for electroconvulsive therapy, or ECT, services to patients who have been authorized by the county or county designee based on medical necessity. ECT services are provided on an outpatient or inpatient basis to patients when it is medically justified and legally permissible. The single-source contracts included in today's item are for distinct programs where either continuity of providers is critical to program success and efficiency, or there is a need for a particular provider with unique knowledge and capacity. Today's third recommendation requests authorization to amend and extend 4 existing contracts. The first is for placement stabilization services, which would be extended up to December 31st of 2024. This program supports the mental health needs of children and youth placed at Polinsky Children's Center after removal from a parent, guardian, or caregiver, and is designed to identify mental health needs of children and youth ages 6 to 17 to ensure proper interventions are in place. We're requesting extensions of the current contract for behavioral health administrative services up to June 30th, 2027. Services within this contract include the Behavioral Health Access and Crisis Line, or ACL, which supports the 988 National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Management of the behavioral health services contracted fee-for-service provider network, and provision of clinical referral support to the mobile crisis response team. As local needs regarding implementation are still evolving, approval of today's action would allow for continued support for the specialty health plan and drug Medi-Cal organized delivery system requirements. We're also requesting an extension of the Breaking Down Barriers contract up to December 31st, 2024. This program aims to reduce mental health stigma and provides outreach, engagement, and education to culturally diverse and historically unserved and underserved populations. And finally, we're requesting an extension of the contract for Behavioral Health Collaborative Court up to June 30th, 2024. This is a full-service partnership and assertive community treatment team that provides clinical case management and mental health, substance-induced psychiatric disorder, rehabilitation, treatment, and recovery services to adults experiencing serious mental illness referred by the Collaborative Behavioral Health Court of San Diego County Superior Court. This model has shown effectiveness in decreasing recidivism as participants transition from custody to community. The fourth and final recommendation requests your board's authorization to execute 2 revenue agreements. The first is the renewal of a revenue agreement originally authorized in January of 2021. The cooperative agreement with the State Department of Rehabilitation provides vocational services for adults aged 18 and older who are experiencing serious mental illness to support them in achieving placement in competitive employment. This action requests the board authorize execution of a renewal of a revenue agreement for the Employment Services Program for the period of July 1st, 2024 through June 30th of 2029. Lastly, we're requesting your board's authorization for a revenue agreement which will increase the number of licensed DUI programs from 3 programs to 4 programs, with a new program set to be in the North Inland region. In summary, we ask that your board approve today's recommendations, which will issue competitive solicitations, authorize single-source contracts, amend to extend contract terms, and execute cooperative and revenue agreements. Subject to any questions, this concludes our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over for public comment, and then we'll have questions.
Thank you, Chairwoman Vargas. We have 5 requests to speak on this item, 1 in person and 4 requesting to speak by phone. Also note that we received 1 e-comment that was neutral for this item. Any members of the public that requested to speak on item 14 by phone, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. We'll begin with the in-person speaker. The individual is in opposition to this item. I'd like to invite forward Mark. Seeing no movement in the chamber, we'll hear from those that requested to speak by phone. We'll begin with our first caller.
It's truth, and so they continue. The data-driven deception attack upon those under the age of 21, Bergman. The only programs I approve of are the programs for alcohol and substance abuse treatment. Some of the rest of the recommendations from Helen are really just evil. They include a community harm reintroduction team. That means needles and pipes will be provided to children, just like they are to adults here in the county. Of course, that means Jim has to vote no because others in the party went on TV and said he has to. It's called political pressure. Good on those who did it. I wish they'd do it for every item. Let me give a free shout-out to Escondido Mayor Dane White for his passion. There's also a program for prevention of psychosis, more behavioral health services, including school-based, like I said, going after the children, with electroconvulsive therapy. That's electric shock like we're still in the eugenics era. I want to hear mayors and city council members speaking out against that. But some of them only listen to talking heads like Carl DeMaio. I don't know why. There will be contracts with the Polinsky Children's Center, which has been caught not providing good care to children. Breaking Down Barriers Initiative, which is the United Nations and Rockefeller Foundation partnered Bill Gates cash-funded organization, and with at least 3 other companies whose websites I couldn't even find. I found the equity statement to be quite racist when it said, quote, rates of serious mental illness among Black African-American residents were 145% higher compared to others, end quote. Prove it. And it calls the county behavioral beast health system a steward of public health. When did that happen? Maybe a steward of destroying each individual's health. It's over $244 million to do harm to children, most of it coming from the state, of course. But bad mafia-style business never changes. It only grows to hurt and encompass more people into its web. So it's another item I'm against.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Paul Henkin, the presentation did not make it clear what these contracts are for or what the actual need is. It's nice to have programs for Asians and all, but I really hope the focus is to integrate these people into society, since it is really my feeling that a lot of these equity programs, equity-focused programs, really cause a lot of these problems by kind of separating the people from society who really have a desire to actually function in normal society. And I think it's unwise in general to issue single source contracts, but especially here with behavioral health, it is important not to be locked into one supplier, a way of thinking, or a way of doing business, especially since you're dealing with unstable individuals with diverse and changing needs, and they may simply reject service if it's not what they like, which is not what we'd like either. And that's about it, I think. Thanks.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Y'all and your single source procurement, so good, right? Your contract, you just go to one, because you know who you need to go to. And I just love it because, it's like anybody who is not okay with your whole agenda has a behavioral health issue, right? So, we have one, like I have one, right? I have a behavioral health issue because I come in and redress the government that is supposed to work for us. And so that is a huge problem. So no wonder why you guys have this anticipated need for all of these workers, for all of these, like, you know, services that you need to provide, and you've got the hundreds of millions of dollars to spend on it, right? Because, I mean, we can't have parents trying to protect their children. I mean, that is ridiculous. They obviously have a behavioral health issue if they are trying to keep their children safe. So let's make sure that we take them away from them and put them into a system that is only going to, you know, sell them for money, have sex with them, all of these things. But yeah, it's, you know, the other people that have the behavioral health issues, you guys are the ones that need to be looked into because of all this stuff that you're doing is so twisted and upside down. You act like it is all wrapped up in this beautiful package. And like I said before, Satan is so good at that, and he wanted to let you guys know that he is very, very proud of all the things that you guys are doing. We're the first at everything, and, you know, so it's fantastic. We're the first to just, you know, send everybody straight into, you know, those fiery pits, but it's cool because at that time, at least we will be able to spend eternity trying to find out how to put out fires, right? It'll be good. So just really proud of you guys for, you know, really pretending that you're doing something that is good for, you know, kids and behavioral health and just all these people. And it's good that you're going to, you know, bring them into schools so then you can manipulate them more to believe that their parents are out to get them, and then you just take them and put them in the system. Good on you guys. I mean, gold stars all around. Again, I have some aged sewer water for you guys. We'll be bringing in at some.
Thank you. For the record, that speaker is Audra, and Chairwoman Vargas. That concludes public comment on this item.
Thank you. Thank you to Dr. Bergman and everyone else who's been working on this item. I'm happy to make a motion to support. I am specifically really grateful for the culturally responsive component of the resources and services for the multicultural community counseling program. I know that that's absolutely needed. And then the fact that a lot of these programs are going to go for our youth and school-based services, the school links, et cetera, it's extremely, extremely important. So very appreciative of that. Is there a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Seeing no further discussion, please call the vote.
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson.
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond. Vice Chair Lawson-Remer.
Aye.
Chairwoman Vargas.
Vargas, yes.
That motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
All right. The next item on the agenda is item 15. I love that we're getting more money, authorizing the acceptance of the Bridge Housing Grant Funds and the request for statement of qualifications, authorized amendments for licensed adult and senior residential care facility slots, and the competitive procurements for grant administration services. So I'm going to turn it over to the team for an update and a presentation.
Thank you again, Chairwoman Vargas and members of the board. With your board's leadership, the Health and Human Services Agency continues to pursue funding opportunities to expand access to critical mental health and substance use disorder prevention, engagement, housing, and treatment services. Today, we are seeking authority to accept behavioral health bridge housing grant funding from the state. This funding will support more people accessing licensed residential adult and senior care facilities, also known as board and care, that has been identified as a gap in our continuum of care. I'll hand it back to Dr. Luke Bergman, Director of Behavioral Health Services, to provide you with the details.
Thank you again, Dr. McDonald. Last year, your board adopted the Behavioral Health Optimal Care Pathways, or OCP model, an algorithm specific to the needs of San Diego County that's informed by current and historical data, existing local models of care, and literature on the impacts of other best practices. The OCP looks at where patients or clients are getting stuck, what barriers to care they're experiencing, and imagines new pathways that could help them achieve better wellness and many fewer visits to locked acute inpatient care over the long run. At a system level, the OCP tells us what future capacity would be necessary to optimize all care in our county across 4 broad service categories in the behavioral health continuum. These are community crisis diversion, acute inpatient care, subacute services, and community-based care. It's not surprising that the OCP recommends fewer days of inpatient acute care, since optimal care would result in fewer episodes of behavioral health crisis. More striking and enabling the shift from acute care is that the OCP recommends that we more than double utilization across the other 3 service categories. For this presentation, I want to draw your attention to community-based care in particular, which is mostly what we colloquially call board and care and is mostly licensed by community care licensing at the state as either adult residential facilities or facilities for the residential care of the elderly. The OCP recommends nearly a 150% increase in board and care bed utilization, as measured in bed days, which translates into a need for approximately 450 new beds devoted to board and care for clients with public insurance and paying for board and care primarily with their supplemental security income. This is easily the most significant need across the behavioral health continuum and has been driven by operators leaving the market and by ensuing intense competition among clients in need. A competition that those with fewer funds who are primarily on Medi-Cal and using SSI as payment tend in most cases to lose. But a fund newly established by the state called Behavioral Health Bridge Housing can help us substantially address this need in the short term. Through the California Department of Healthcare Services, the program will award a total of $1.5 billion in state grant funding for bridge housing expansion, which offers short and mid-term housing options to people experiencing homelessness who have serious behavioral health conditions, with the goal of connecting them to long-term housing. The Bridge Housing Program funds will primarily provide operational and supportive services funding to expand bridge housing capacity within current or new settings by optimizing utilization of existing services in the community. Behavioral health bridge housing money can be spent across 4 domains, including county program implementation, outreach and engagement, startup, infrastructure, and lastly, housing expenses, including shelter, interim housing, rental assistance, auxiliary or patch funds for assisted living settings, such as board and cares, and housing navigation. The $1.5 billion in state grant awards will be released through 4 rounds for California counties and tribal entities, with the initial round comprised of non-competitive allocations, followed by 3 rounds of competitive allocations ending in fiscal year 24-25. Behavioral Health Services is planning to apply for the first competitive round open to counties, which is slated to open for applications this summer. If we're granted awards from this or other state housing and infrastructure funding, such as the CCE Capital Project Grant, we'll return to the board to seek authorization to accept. In the meantime, last month, San Diego County Behavioral Health Services was conditionally awarded approximately $44.3 million of one-time, non-competitive behavioral health bridge housing grant funding through the initial round. This funding must be utilized by June 30th of 2027. And in alignment with the recommendations from the Behavioral Health OCP model, Behavioral Health Services has approval from the state to spend approximately $41.5 million of the grant funds to establish new board and care payments, what we sometimes call patch payments, that would be used to supplement funds from SSI that most Medi-Cal clients use for board and care payments, to give them a better chance of finding residential care in the context of overall shortages. The remaining funds, totaling $2.8 million, will be utilized for first-year infrastructure startup costs that will expedite operations. Startup funds can be used for things like furniture, equipment, and minor renovations. These startup funds would be utilized in the first year and would be shifted to additional board and care slots if unspent. Today's action requests your authority to accept this one-time grant funding and issue a request for statement of qualifications. Additionally, we request authorization to amend existing contracts with licensed residential, adult, and senior care facilities to reflect changes in program, funding, or service requirements, as well as competitive solicitations to support the implementation of grant funding awarded to Behavioral Health Services. Thanks again, and I'll take any questions.
We're going to go ahead.
Thank you, Chairwoman Vargas. We have 5 requests to speak on this item, 1 in person and 4 requesting to speak by phone. I also note for the record that we received 3 e-comments, all in favor. Any members of the public that requested to speak on item 15 by phone, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. Begin with the in-person speaker. The speakers in opposition to this item, I'd like to invite forward Mark. Not seeing any movement in the chamber. We'll now hear from those that requested to speak by phone. We'll start with our first caller.
Hi, Paul Henkin. this could be a great help in reducing homelessness. It's a shame that the first round, $44 or so million of behavioral health bridge housing grant funds to increase bridge housing capacity for individuals with various behavioral health conditions or experiencing homelessness. It's a pity that they'll be used just for people in adult and senior residential care facilities. They're very deserving, but there are so many other people. But now the second round will be $1.5 billion to address the immediate and sustainable housing needs of people experiencing homelessness or have serious behavioral health conditions. It's a great step in the right direction. I also hope that you can build or create housing for these people quickly, perhaps with the use of 3D printed houses, as both I and Mark Mark suggested, or other things like shipping container houses that are cheaper than regular housing. I think a few people mentioned those too. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the next caller.
This is truth, and I've learned that Jim likes needles and Nora likes money. Bergman, do you think they'll approve your request? You already got electric shocks and needles. This reminds me of the county's multiple species conservation program, where land keeps being taken up. We'll all be living in a giant county conservation park before you know it. But with all these county behavioral health programs, we're all going to be in a giant county padded white room, too. The county has decided to try to increase capacity for care facility bed days by about 450 beds. But it's just the usual game of doing whatever the state says, because they're offering up $1.5 billion in debt dollars to the county to implement their behavioral health bridge housing program. Hard to say no to that amount. I offered Jim some pizza, so I guess I can't compete. If I try to give a positive, I like that this state program actually mentions substance use disorder. It doesn't say it will actually offer substance abuse treatment services or enforce such programs, though. Jim, you should definitely back up what you said on the news about the state's program and actually vote no. There's also $44 million in state debt dollars for bridge housing for homeless people with serious behavioral health conditions. That doesn't even include money for beds, just for operations. Kind of like Mayor Todd's plan. Just sweep the homeless up and power wash the streets so we can celebrate events like Pride without any blight on the streets. Throw them in El Cajon. Throw them in tents on hot asphalt with no showers. Throw them in stack and pack. Whatever, since apparently they're viewed as worthless people to be swept under the county rug like garbage. Even the county's faulty stat of only 9% of homeless reporting a substance use disorder is garbage. A whole bunch of bureaucracy to tell people who are homeless that there's no hope or help for real shelter. Go to Chula Vista or El Cajon if you want to live. Pretty sad. I can't stand items like this that don't actually help people. They're just playing the state money game. You know, eventually they're going to run out of money, and then what are you guys going to do? That's the reality. You're going to have to wake up to one of these days. I'm against it again.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the next caller.
Hello, this is Catherine Rhodes, and I kind of just wanted to remind the Board of Supervisors that you guys are actually responsible for housing every severely and mentally ill homeless person in San Diego County. And prior, you used to only say that you're responsible for the severely mentally ill homeless in the unincorporated. Now you admit it is countywide that you have to take care of all these people. So how many severely mentally ill homeless do we have in San Diego right now? I don't know. I was wondering if you could ask that question. The other thing is that what I'm recommending is for this bridge housing, and so it could be turned into long-term housing. This would be the perfect time for you guys to try to create tiny home communities of bridge housing where these tiny homes then can be converted to long-term care. And you did your request of what people with severe mentally ill homeless want. They said the first thing they want is privacy and a place of their own. They want to be allowed to have pets and not have smoking. They want to be allowed for their friends to be able to come and actually visit them. And so what I would recommend that you do is try to go look at the amicus model that's being used right now in the city of El Cajon, where they have a tiny home community of camping cabins that could be something that I believe a lot of severely mentally ill homeless in San Diego County would love to have. It's private. It gives them a place to put their stuff. And I know a lot of times when people have incidents when they're homeless, they don't want to go to the hospital because they know if they go to the hospital, they'll lose all their belongings. And they would rather be crazy in the street with their belongings.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the final caller.
Nora, you love money. I have $20 in my hand. If you'd like it, I will drop it in your Dropbox. But, you know, it's just funny because it's like $1.5 billion to be grabbed for, right? So you guys, you know, I think about when you're doing Sandag and you're playing with Monopoly money. I wonder, do you, like, sleep with Monopoly money on your beds, like, and you guys just throw it up in the air and you're like, there's so much money. Oh, my gosh, I am just so excited right now. Because, you know, it's like no matter how much money you guys throw at stuff, like I could throw money at so many things, right? And just doesn't mean that things get done. It just means that you're like showing that you're doing something, right? We're getting the money. I love money. And I love to pretend that I'm going to go and help these people. But it's like with homelessness, right? It's like no matter how much money we get, the problem gets worse. It's so weird. It's so no matter how much money you guys get, the problem gets worse. And no matter how much money you throw at behavioral health, because it's, you know, is it behavioral? Is it mental? Now it's behavioral because, like, mental before was like, that's not broad enough. We need to encompass, like, all behaviors. And as long as we do that, then we can get billions of dollars, you guys. Billions. And then, you know what we can do with it? Put it in our pockets and watch the world around us crumble. It's so fantastic. It's like, no matter what. Yeah. So, and I know, Nora, your money is pesos, so I mean, I don't want to, you know, I just want to be clarification there to make sure that, you know, I'm encompassing all money in this. But yeah, as long as you guys, you know, just continue to seek these funds and say all these pipe dreams are going to happen, right? Then you'll just keep getting the money and the problems will still stay. Because if we ever fix the problem, then the money doesn't come in. So it's like you can't fix it. That would be stupid. Then we wouldn't get money, right, Nora? I mean, you're doing so good. Your handlers are just, man, I think they're sending you a test.
Thank you. Chairwoman Vargas, that concludes public comment on this item.
Thank you. Again, excited to see that the county is taking advantage of all of these opportunities. I'm happy to make a motion. We've done a lot of work on behavioral health as a county, and I think particularly around the optimal care pathways model, I think it demonstrates that this is part of our continuum of care. And I know that a lot of Medi-Cal enrollees have not, do not reside in board and care settings and have limited income. So this is really, really opportune. And the $44.3 million is going to really allow us to help most people in need with the folks that have fewer resources. So happy to make a motion to support. And again, thank you, Dr. Bergman, for really working on trying to get more resources into the county. Second. Okay. Have a second. And any additional comment?
Yeah, I just want to thank the team, but I also just want to acknowledge what a departure this is from the past, right? That we inherited a system where there just weren't enough beds, and we have to be really aggressive at figuring out how to close that gap and meet that need, because there's so many folks in need in our community. And it's really unfortunate that for so long we haven't been focused on this, and I'm very glad that we are now doing the work to bring home money from the state, and $44 million is a great start, and doubling the beds is going to make a huge dent. And this is exactly what we need to be doing if we're going to have any hope of tackling the major challenges facing our community. So thank you, and let's keep moving forward.
No other comments. We have a motion and a second. Please call the vote.
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson.
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond.
Aye.
Vice Chair Lawson-Remer.
Aye.
Chairwoman Vargas.
Vargas, aye.
That motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
All right. The next item that we have is item number 16. We're going to move on to discussion of item 16, approval of employment agreement for the clerk of the board. I'm going to give Andrew a chance to step up. All right, why don't we go ahead and turn it over for the public comment?
Thank you, Chairwoman Vargas. And before we go to public comment, I'd like to read welcome. Thank you very much. And I'd like to read the following statement into the record. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54953, prior to taking final action, the legislative body shall orally report a summary of a recommendation for a final action on the salary or compensation paid in the form of fringe benefits of local agency executives. The employment agreement before the board today contains compensation and benefits for the clerk of the board that are in accordance with the Executive Management Compensation Plan and includes an automobile allowance under Section 496 of the County Administrative Code, paid holidays, vacation, sick leave, and 80 hours of executive time off annually. The agreement also provides for an annual county contribution to the employee's deferred compensation plan equal to the lesser of 2% gross annual salary or 100% of the pre-tax deferral limit and additional payment for the employee tax liability. And with that being said, we will go to public comment. We have 2 total requests to speak, and both of those are coming via phone. I'd like to also note for the record, we did receive 2 e-comments on this item. One was in favor, none were in opposition, and one was neutral. For any of the members that have requested to speak on this item by phone, if you could please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. We will now hear from those that have requested to speak by phone. When it is your turn to speak, you will be unmuted. You will hear a recording that will tell you to begin your comments after the beep. I'd like to remind the callers again, they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking, and we will begin with our first caller.
It's truth. In 2020, Andrew J. Potter made over $167,000 a year. But his job is not on the chopping block, and he can listen to this all later. He's sticking around. And the agreement's great because it says that the County of San Diego is a political subdivision of the state of California. That's a new one. I'm used to reading a corporation. It also says that Andrew shall serve at the pleasure of the board. A little questionable language. A potential double meeting, but it definitely sounds like a slave position, like a jester. And that Andrew will agree to comply with all federal, state, and local laws, including the county charter, and that he's subject to the common law. But how does that work when all those things are in conflict with each other? Didn't we already witness that pretty clearly during 2020? We actually first need people on this board who understand that they're supposed to be following local laws and not state or federal mandates, which amount to suggestions. After getting knowledgeable and truly representative supervisors, then we could take an accurate look at finding the same type of clerk. I still remember last year when Luke was speaking, and both Andrew and the County News Center cut his speech about firearms. And I remember the time when Nathan cut off someone's speech, took a recess, and then completely skipped my phone and comment. Just like inflation, Nora, censorship isn't fake. But hey, I'm hoping you'll fix the things around here that Nathan destroyed. Snapping fingers, not giving censorship orders to Andrew. These are just starts for improvements around here. And same applies to Andrew. See, I have an aversion to lies. So someone tells me to do something I know is wrong, I don't compromise. The compromise is to lie to oneself. It's a toxic, co-parasitic way of living, and I don't recommend it. No job is worth selling your soul for. I like Mayor Mesa, who apparently doesn't have a soul. That's a lie, too. But hey, Andrew's sticking around. I guess it could be worse. How about you, Ryan? Are you sticking around? That's all right. You guys are all right, but it could be worse.
Thank you. Your time is up. We'll go to our next caller.
Yeah, I just find it interesting that this is like on the, you know, discussion when there were things on the consent calendar that should have been, you know, under discussion. But it's like, you know, we have these clerks who are still very good at silencing the people and making sure that, you know, once that final second is up, we just, you know, shut them up and make sure that they can't continue speaking. Or, you know, for some, if it's somebody who, you know, we really like, we'll allow them to go, you know, 30 seconds or a minute longer. It just depends. But, you know, I just find it interesting. You have to have a clerk that is going to do your bidding and silence the people even quicker. And that's been going on since, you know, the times of Nathan Fletcher, which is, you know, so great. And so, you know, I just think that as we, you know, talk about who this would be, obviously it's still going to be Andrew, but, you know, we're paying you guys to be there, and you guys are silencing the people like nobody's business. And it couldn't be more sad because you sit there and you talk about wanting to have people come in and talk and, like, you know, tell you how you feel or how they feel and be able to redress their grievances. Instead, you know, you're like spending their time like as soon as that second is up. And it's just, you know, couldn't be more evident that whoever you have in that position needs to be very, you know, heavy on their fingers with silencing the people. So it's just sad because we're basically paying you guys to us. And, you know, that couldn't be more sad, but we pay for everything. We're paying for you to enslave us. We're paying for you to, you know, take children away and put them in trafficking.
Thank you. Your time is up. And Chairwoman Vargas, that concludes public comment on this item.
Thank you so much for that. I'm happy to make a motion to support the approval of the employment agreement for clerk of the board. And I will just add for the record that he is an exceptional clerk and we're lucky to have him. Second?
Second.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, let's call the vote, please.
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson.
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond.
Aye.
Vice Chair Lawson-Remer.
Aye.
Chairwoman Vargas.
Vargas, aye.
That motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present, voting aye.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is item 17, approval of the temporary employment of Terry Bueller in the critical need position of senior investigator before 180 days have passed since the date of retirement. We're going to go ahead and call public speakers.
Thank you, Chairwoman Vargas. We have 3 total requests to speak, 1 individual in person and 2 requesting to speak by phone. Also like to note for the record, we did not receive any e-comments on this item. For any members of the public that have requested to speak on this item by phone, please dial into the conference line now using those instructions that were provided to you. We will begin with the in-person speakers. As your name is called, if you could please come forward. I would like to invite forward Mark. Seeing no movement in the chambers, we'll go to the callers. We will now hear from those that have requested to speak by phone. Again, when it is your turn to speak, you'll be unmuted and you will hear a recording that will tell you to begin your comments after the beep. Again, I'd like to remind the callers they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking, and we'll begin with our first caller.
Yeah, I always find it interesting when you guys know that, you know, somebody is retiring and you don't do your own due diligence prior to that to make sure that there is enough, you know, staff and or resources to replace them. We're always seeming to have to bring these people back to do continue their job, but I mean, you know when they're going to be retiring, and so you're obviously not preparing enough for when that time comes to be able to, you know, have things continue to run smoothly. So, you know, then we have to go back and have them come back and pay more. You know, you guys are very negligent in all the things that you do. If you were, you know, planning ahead, things that you would have this taken care of and we wouldn't be having to deal with this as an item. And again, there were other items on the consent calendar that were way more important to talk about individually that you refused to put on the discussion. So, I mean, this is something that really, you know, could have gone on there because it's great. But I mean, you guys bringing in all your tech BS and whatnot is, so I don't know. I'm just ridiculous that you guys continue to do all these things and we just pay you to do it. I can't wait for the day that people really embody what the Declaration of Independence says when you know that all of these, people are going against the people and their oath and everything that this nation stands for, that, we have to abolish the government. And so it's about frickin' time, because nothing is going to get better when you guys are sitting there, just talking about how much you love money. You're not talking about how much you like to change stuff. You talk about how much you love money. And that's very despicable because it's blood money. All the crap that you guys get is freaking blood.
Now hear from the next caller.
This is the living anime character truth. みんな本当に自己面の前がアニメは学問だった。私のことをね、でも実家も変わる。Now here's a dark joke about retirement. In Japan, you don't get to retire. You're done when you die from overwork. Maybe it's the same here. County Council Senior Investigator Terry Bueller recently retired after 17 years. But after less than 180 days, she's already coming back. But if she did provide assistance for the Office of Ethics and Compliance, then I'm wondering if we should bring her back. Compliance and ethics don't even go together in this county. That's another lesson from 2020. The excuse for bringing back Terry is not that she wants to go for 18 years, but because the Office of Ethics and Compliance is in transition. Everything seems to be in transition around here. I mean, maybe we should thank Nathan for that damage too. And then in a few years, we can thank inputted Janessa for the same thing. Hopefully not. Allegedly, in 2021, Terry made over $183,000 in salary and benefits. Now, for less than 960 hours of work, she'll get another over $46,000 from the taxpayers for about 120 work days. But what do you got to say about all this, Sarah? How are your emotions on over there? Did somebody click her on switch? According to Jim, some people feel offended by clapping, but I think more people feel offended by robots. So, I actually want to give a round of applause for this item so that it may feel offended as I do by its existence. Hold on, I'm not very good at clapping. Okay, and if you guys want, even though I have no qualifications other than ethics, I can run for the new chief ethics officer and change everything, Nora. What do you think? It's like you as a supervisor, right? I love that line. It's classic to me now. But I could change everything, too. I could take your place. How about that? That'd be interesting. Let me come out of retirement. How old am I that I'm retired or no?
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Paul Hinton. I wanted to make sure that if you're finding it necessary to reemploy an investigator, I would appreciate, and I'd like to know if that's what she's going to do. Is she going to make sure that records such as the slush fund / neighborhood reinvestment grants program stuff is properly documented and audited to make sure we aren't just giving it away to private individuals? And I'm sure there are a lot of other things that should be properly documented and, make sure we aren't just giving it away to private individuals. My question would be, is Terry Bueller going to investigate all these potential slush monies? Also, I'm not sure if clapping is in favor. I think finger snapping is more in favor now. Thank you.
Thank you. And Chairwoman Vargas, that concludes public comment on this item.
Thank you very much. And so I'm happy to make a motion. Need a second? We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, can we call the vote, please?
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson.
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond.
Aye.
Vice Chair Lawson-Remer.
Aye.
Chairwoman Vargas.
Vargas, aye.
That motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
Thank you. I'll turn over item 18 to you.
Thank you, Chairwoman Vargas. Item 18 has been withdrawn at the request of the Chief Administrative Officer. However, we do have 3 members of the public that wish to speak on this item. Members of the public that requested to speak can speak to the withdrawal. All those individuals are by phone. So those individuals that requested to speak on item 18 by phone, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. Again, since this item is withdrawn, there will be no action taken by the board this afternoon. We'll give the individuals a moment to call in if they would like to speak. We'll begin with the first caller. Again, you'll have 2 minutes to address the board.
Hello, this is Catherine Rhodes, and thank you for taking this off. Mainly because, and this is actually for my supervisor, Chair Lawson-Remer. I think that you really need to understand your periodic financial report that is part of item 10, communications received. Because for this particular item, the San Diego Unified School District wants to get a $20 million note so that they can build things, as part of their capital improvement program. But the only thing is that when you actually look at your periodic financial report, and this is where everybody takes out bonds, they put them in these funds, they get hoarded for decades, and then nobody uses them, and then you try to borrow even more money when you don't need to. For example, just on page 32, there was $133 million in cash available in the San Diego Unified School District building funds and all these different fund balances, starting with fund number 57156, San Diego Unified High General Obligation Funds that has $58 million available in cash. The next one's $44 million. The next one's $76 million. The next one's $3.8 million. You've got like 3 of them that are over $1 million. And then you've got another $4 million, and then another $2 and $1 million, plus a few other ones that were left. There's so much money that the San Diego DeVito has in cash that, more than I would say at least $150 million. There's no need for them to try to borrow an additional $20 million notes when they don't even need the money. So please call me so I could show you this. You can show that the people at San Diego and all the
Thank you. We'll now hear from the next caller.
First of all, Andrew, you can't tell us what we can speak about when we're talking on an item. And that's part of the reason where the problem comes in is you guys sit here and dictate what can be said. And just the fact that, people are having to borrow money to pay for certain things, it's like, there's excess money out there that isn't being spent, just like the previous caller was saying. And yet we're sitting here seeking more money to help us in times. And it's like, all these people that are suffering in the county from all of the taxes and stuff that you guys put down, the new ones and all these extra fees, they don't have this relief system to come in and be like, hey, we're going to borrow this money just to make sure that we can continue. I mean, really what needs to happen is parents need to take their children out of school and quit paying into the system that is destroying children's lives. And if that was the case, then they wouldn't even have any money to continue. So that actually needs to happen because what's happening in schools is disturbing with them teaching sex when sex was not something that all of a sudden you just go to school and you talk about. I mean, we're funding this kind of shenanigans and we're not actually protecting children. So the only way to do that is to get kids out of school immediately and let them suffer the consequence of, having to pay these bills to do these things to the children that are totally nefarious, especially even asking them to be injected is totally bogus. And so in that, the whole system will crumble if people quit paying into it and quit acquiescing to all of these things, saying like, I don't have a choice. We all have a choice, and it's time for us to let these systems fall, because all they're doing is destroying the lives of children while they're pretending to protect them, like you guys always do. We're protecting you. You know, we're not harming you. No, it's all harm. So.
Thank you. For the record, that speaker was Audra. Now hear from the next caller.
This is truth, and just like the best kind of charcoal, I'm activated. This item says that local governments and school districts may experience temporary cash flow deficits during the fiscal year due to a mismatch in the timing of the receipt of revenue. It'd be interesting if I use that excuse for my bills. I'm going to pay. The timing of the cash flow is just mismatched. But unlike people, school districts are privileged with tax and revenue anticipation notes to keep school operations going to their cash mismatching times. Only the children knew what was going on. Maybe they'd be at these meetings. I have three main reasons to be in opposition to this item. Number one, hear that school districts are not operating properly within budget. If they were, they wouldn't require what amounts to cash advance approval from the county in order to keep their doors open. Number two, by operating like a juggler, trying to balance one receipt to the next, and then relying on the county to bail them out, teaching children that risky investment or debt is okay and normal, which is not true. And three, the government schools are not teaching anything useful or good, so I'm all for defunding them. Cities and neighborhoods need to fund their own schools without inflated budgets, political ideologies, activist teachers, big pharma invasions, communist core values, foreign United Nations Millennium or Sustainable Development Goals, and all of the other absolute garbage curriculum that now permeates most schools around the country. Unlike what this item suggests, those types of schools are not valuable resources to students in the county. They're more akin to mental poisoning and indoctrination centers. And if I could do it all again myself, I wouldn't. It was a lot to unlearn to get to this point today of a real education. What happened to Ryan? It really is like a circus. Popped in and then popped out like a clown car. And I second the previous commenters. They were also dead on. Where's that money at, like Catherine said? I always want to know, too. She's got it down on the facts in that regard. Great. Go to this item.
Thank you. And Chairwoman Vargas, that concludes public comment on this item.
At this time, I'm asking each of my colleagues if they want to provide any brief updates, reports on progress, or share any pertinent information at this time. All right, seeing none, we are now going to move over to, that concludes the business before the board today, but we're now going to proceed with adjournments in memory. I want to do an adjournment today in memory of Coyote Moon. And so today, we adjourn in memory of Alicia Tulio, known to most as Coyote Moon. Born to a Mexican mother and a Filipino father, she was the fourth oldest of five with two brothers and two sisters. She legally changed her name to Coyote Moon while working at Sempra South Bay Substation in the 1970s. She was the only female working at the plant for the longest time and faced discrimination and harassment while there, but she always stood up for herself and for others. She was instrumental in raising concerns that would eventually lead to the overturning of a cross-dressing ordinance in National City in 2020. She was an avid sports fan, supported the Chargers, Padres, Golden State Warriors, and SDSU Aztec, to name a few of her favorites. Moon loved her activist life almost as much as her two adult children and her grandson, Jimmy. About 10 or 12 years ago, she sold her University Heights condo and bought her aunt's house in National City, where she really created a legacy and ensuring that she was always a champion and an advocate, and she was someone who I would consider a friend. Moon's niece, Teresa Fillmore, has been honoring her aunt's life by making bracelets and necklaces using silver moon beads along with other beads of various colors and shapes. And her spirit will always be with us. She was absolutely with us during Pride this weekend, and I know that her loved ones and her many friends in the community, not only in National City, but across the state, know that our lives are better because she touched all of us along the way. So thank you. The next item on our agenda is the remainder of our public non-agenda public comment speakers. So I'm going to turn it over to the clerk.
Thank you, Chairwoman Vargas. We have 11 remaining requests to speak on matters not listed on the agenda, 3 in person and 8 requesting to speak by phone. For those that requested to speak by phone, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. We'll begin with the in-person speakers. As your name is called, please come forward and stand against the east wall under the murals until it is your turn to speak. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board. I'd like to invite forward Lainey Hardman. Speakers have been identified as Sonic and Michelle Krug. If I've called your name, please come forward. I'll ask you to please state your name for the audio record.
My name is Lainey Hardman. I am a longtime resident of Mira Mesa for 23 years. And I'm here to address the politics surrounding the Epicenter project and highlight various issues raised by our community members. The communication and promotional documents from both the San Diego County Parks and Recreation and Supervisor Lawson Reamer on the Epicenter community outreach include the logos of Supervisor Lawson Reamer, Mayor Todd Gloria, and Councilmember Kent Lee. The County Park and Recreation community presentation had these logos as well. This inclusion raises questions about the level of involvement and support from these different city officials, especially since the lease between the city and the county has not been negotiated or approved. This is incredibly misleading to the community and gives the impression that this is a done deal. And it's actually having the opposite effect of community members thinking that there's nothing really to provide input to because this has already been decided. If the logos show the principles of the proposal, where are the logos of the other county members, county supervisors that approved these funds? Why are Mayor Gloria and Kent Lee on a county proposal that has not been approved yet? Both Supervisor Lawson Reamer and Mayor Gloria are running for re-election in 2024. This inclusion of their logos in mailers for the Epicenter project feel like campaign mailers using taxpayer funds. We know that $1 million has been budgeted for community outreach, planning, design, etc. When we see mailers with the logos of incumbents that offer free food and games, this implies that this is a celebration of a done deal. Supervisor Lawson Reamer's email messages also imply a completed project, not a proposal. The current promotional nature of these communications raise ethical concerns. Community members are concerned that the Epicenter project is being used as a political prop.
Thank you. Your time is up. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Sonic. Or you may know who exactly I am, but I just want to point something out. May 23rd, Board of Supervisors meeting, it teaches the people how to commit voter fraud in large scale. It teaches people how they could go ahead and take someone's sample ballot, go to the polling location and vote for them, and their ballot will get counted, not the person whose ballot is intended. Now, each and every one of you have tried to stop me from getting this information out. Unfortunately, I went into the Board of Supervisors meeting and I taught everyone, every single person. So if you guys want to continue to tell me these elections are legit, by all means, you could continue to lie and wait until the wrong person the media does not like, and they will cover this information. They will throw you under the bus, and they'll run it over multiple times. The key reason why I was coming here and giving you guys so much crap was not because I believed that I could stop you. Hell no. What I believed is by constantly telling you guys this, and you guys constantly trying to ignore these factors, you are now accomplices. Cynthia allowing ballots that came back with the wrong ballot type to be counted, she is an accomplice to fraud. You guys are helping out with fraud. I would like to know how many ballots got counted that were the wrong ballot type for Governor Newsom's election. I also want to know why, if we had fewer ballot types for that election versus the governor. You remember Arnold, same type election, one issue. I'm curious if for that election we had so many ballot types that you can identify fraud. Have fun with that.
We'll now hear from the individuals that requested to speak by phone. We'll start with our first caller.
Hello, this is Catherine Rhodes, and what I wanted to talk about is this is to basically my supervisor, Chair Lawson Reamer, and everybody that was in Nathan Fletcher's. You know, Todd Gloria is misinterpreting state law that is going to require Golden Hall to close down. It's going to require the old East Street Library to close down, or the seriously mentally ill homeless women who are going to get kicked out on the street. And in 6 months, it's going to require the closure of the 20th and B shelter. And the only reason is because Todd Gloria is pretending that there's change of use issues, there's CEQA issues, there's laws, why these can't happen. And the thing is, the only law is the following of the voluntary Appendix C of the now 2022 California Building Code that you guys approved. And for example, for the 20th and B lot, all they have to do is, they have to actually have bathrooms on site, which they don't plan on doing, and water on site, which they don't plan on doing, and power on site, which they don't plan on doing. Plus, they also have to have under each individual tent, they have to have a platform that's at least 4 inches high with a 2-inch border. And so that would cost about $100 worth of material. Todd Gloria is pretending that, we'll have to close it down just because of that. And then for the old East Street Library, he's trying to say you have to close it down because of change in use. When Government Code Section 8698, the Shelter Crisis Act, gets rid of any change in use theories. And then the other issue is he's blaming everything on the fire marshal. Fire marshal makes recommendations like have power and have water.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the next caller.
Good afternoon, Board of Supervisors. This is Ann Riddle. I called in today because as a public health educator, I'm often asked to provide information to parent groups. This morning I had a request for a vaping presentation that we do that talks about the emotional and physical dangers with smoking and vaping, tobacco and marijuana. I was told by the parent group, it's a county-wide group, that the reason why they wanted the presentation is so many of their members have personally experienced this issue. And, as they pointed out to me very carefully, the mental health issues that occurred because of it. And this is important to me, and I know it's important to you all. You really recognize the role that poor mental health is playing right now in the lives of our young people, 12 through 25. And these particular parents appreciate your work as well, but they recognize the role of marijuana in producing and contributing to these mental health issues. And as we talk together, some of them live in the unincorporated area, and we're, of course, surprised to hear that you're thinking about increasing the number of marijuana businesses there. And I'd just like to respectfully suggest this is not anything in the unincorporated area that parents would want. They recognize clearly that a storefront normalizes, a marijuana storefront normalizes marijuana use more clearly than any other aspect or advertising could do. And the last thing a child with a mental health problem needs is some sort of flashing light that says, marijuana, this can solve all your problems. So I hope that we'll be sensitive to what our parent community is dealing with these last couple of years.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the next caller.
Hello, this is Kelly McCormick. I'm a public health educator with a focus on youth, alcohol, tobacco, and drug use prevention. I would like to share information that may give people another reason to think twice about using e-cigarettes. Several studies released by the University of Central Florida, vaping, inflammation, and infection. Researcher Dr. Claudia Andel says the additives and chemicals in e-cigarettes and vapes, especially the flavored ones, directly impact the mouth and the lungs, fostering the growth of harmful bacteria in the mouth. The research team is also investigating whether e-liquid chemicals increase the cancer. Dr. Andel says she is especially worried about the number of young people who are vaping, encouraging teenagers and their parents to take vaping more seriously. Nationwide, about 25% of the high school students report using e-cigarette products. In an article published this week, Dr. Andel asked, quote, what do they expect 30 years from now? We all know cancer is also something that doesn't happen overnight. Vaping definitely is not as risk-free as you may assume. Long-term consequences are a big deal, unquote. I speak for many in thanking the county again for passing a ban on the sale of flavored tobacco vapes. Keep in mind the e-liquids cause these problems, whether the user is vaping tobacco, marijuana, or something else. Summer is a great time to quit, especially for teens who are out of school. Through Kick It California, you can find their website by searching Kick It CA. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the next caller.
Hello, this is Peggy Walker. I want to applaud Supervisor Desmond for bringing forward the need to focus on mental health related to gun violence per item 12 today. I believe I heard that mental health was not discussed in the item's report, and if so, that's irresponsible. Though rarely discussed, there's evidence that many mass shooters were marijuana users, as noted in case studies by Pulitzer Prize-winning author Alex Berenson, among others. High-potency marijuana in particular is linked to psychotic breaks, violence, including gun violence, and suicide. And yet, THC potency goes unregulated. Why? Working in public health, I see mental and behavioral health issues and homelessness in our county burgeoning. We need to look at the role substance abuse plays in all of it. The county needs to collect and analyze data to determine all outcomes of cannabis-induced psychosis. It appears that as accessibility to cannabis increases, the more mental and behavioral health issues, the more psychosis, the more addiction and homelessness, and yes, violence we see. Please do not shun this suggestion as prohibitionist talk. It's not. Scores of studies cite incidents of marijuana-induced psychotic breaks resulting in violence that have been perpetrated by unlikely people. The father next door, for example, who suffered unexpected psychotic breaks after a first-time marijuana use. I respectfully submit that we need to stop skirting the issue and start collecting data regarding marijuana's real impact. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the next caller.
You know, as San Diego wants to be the first to everything, and, you know, you guys are, you know, dying to do that. I just wonder, as you have an open border and, you know, we're engaging in all these things with children in schools and, you know, brainwashing them and, you know, manipulating them into this new way of life that you guys want to provide. And, you know, we're, like I said before, it's like, you know, we have this Pride Progress flag and all this that is, you know, promoting minor attracted persons, which is pedophilia. And as a victim, I don't feel safe when I see that kind of stuff, and I don't know how any child could. But as we, you know, this whole sex trafficking movie has come forward that engages with, like, child sacrifice and adrenochrome and organ harvesting. What are we going to do as a county about that? Because you guys want to be the first in everything, then you better be the first to make sure that these children don't get trafficked anymore, that we're ensuring that that border is protected, that these schools are protected, that the children are protected, and they're not being taken away from their parents because they want to protect them. So you guys sit here and say all these things. That should be something that you want to be the first at. The first to say that we're not going to stand for this anymore. We are going to do everything that we can to protect the children. We're going to make sure that the border isn't just going to be flooding with them endlessly. We're going to make sure that instead of teaching children to go to school and just learn how to deal with a shooter, that we're going to make sure that a shooter can't even get to the school or that there's armed guards there. So you guys need to, in your pursuit to be first, start actually doing something that is going to protect kids and the future generations that come after us, because all you're doing is getting money and...
Now hear from the next caller.
Good afternoon, Board of Supervisors. My name is Becky Rapp. I'm a public health educator focused on youth drug prevention and wanted to share with you an article published in the Washington Post titled, "Parents Are Not Ready for the New Reality of Teen Cannabis Use." The article describes the experience of one family when a panicked son called his mom from his dorm room. "Mommy said, my face won't stop twitching. I feel like I'm going to die. I'm trapped in another dimension and I can't get out." This incredibly bright, rule-abiding kid admitted to using marijuana as a junior in high school, which intensified when he went to college and was smoking marijuana nearly every day. He believed in this conception that smoking would help him combat his social anxiety. According to healthcare professionals, this boy had experienced his first of many cannabis-induced psychotic breaks. Sadly, this story is the reality for many parents whose children use marijuana products. The number of American teens using these products has soared in recent years. Oregon Health and Science University found that adolescent cannabis abuse in the U.S. has increased by 245% since the year 2000. That's only over the past 3 years. 35% of high school seniors and 44% of college students reported using marijuana products within the past year. The study also found that vaping was the most popular method due to the appealing flavors. I ask you to consider this family's story and thousands of other parents who have witnessed their teenagers become gripped by addiction. As supervisors, you have the power to change these devastating trends. Please consider strengthening protections and...
Thank you. Now hear from the last caller. Before we do, we have two individuals that requested to speak on closed session matters. If those two individuals could dial into the conference line now at this time. Now hear from the last caller.
Good afternoon, Chair Vargas and Supervisors. My name is Darcy Cook. I serve as the District Manager of Mission Resource Conservation District in Fallbrook, and we have an unresolved storm drain issue with the County Department of Public Works. In early March, the storm drain that traverses our property caused a sinkhole due to corrosion of the storm drain pipe. The Department of Public Works refuses to take responsibility for the repair as there was no easement established on the property, which was originally county property. The county should have provided an easement and disclosure when Mission RCD purchased the property. We are a special district of the state of California and as such, a not-for-profit and are not in a position to cover the significant costs of repairs. The storm drain is a 10-foot diameter storm drain that drained a significant area of Fallbrook. It was constructed by the county and is cored through in many sections on and off of our property. It runs along Alvarado, crosses Vine, Alvarado, and Main Streets, which presents a structural concern and safety issue to major sections of downtown Fallbrook. We respectfully and urgently request that the county take responsibility and schedule repairs as soon as possible so that we can move forward with our programs. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Thank you. Chairwoman Vargas, that concludes a request for non-agenda public communication this afternoon. We'll now hear from the individuals that requested to speak on the closed session matters. We'll begin with our first caller.
All right, truth. Case B is the estate of Elisa Serna versus the County of San Diego. This is one of the worst cases I've ever read in my life. 24-year-old Elisa was arrested for a charge of petty theft. She was pregnant, and yet her and her baby died in a medical observation jail cell at Los Colinos in 2019. She was only in jail for 5 days. There's video that Sheriff Detective Lisa Brannon said showed Elisa fell more than 12 times on her last day of life. Yet deputies and medical staff didn't appear to see most of those falls. On her last fall, Elisa fell to the side and hit her head, falling to the ground. The nurse and deputy checked, then left Elisa on the floor in her own urine for over an hour. Only after that time did they perform CPR. That video will not be seen in the news because Judge Selena Epley ruled that cameras won't be allowed in the courtroom. Dr. Frederick von Lintig and nurse Danilee Pasqua have pleaded not guilty. And case E is Deborah Steismeyer and Stacy Ralph versus the County of San Diego. Detectives Deborah and Stacy alleged sexual harassment and discrimination by Sergeant Sean Silva, who's conveniently now retired. They also alleged that others at the Poway station witnessed and received reports but did nothing to stop it. Last year, the Internal Affairs report sustained findings, including sexual harassment and multiple violations of discrimination. The report stated, quote, over several years, Sergeant Silva fostered a culture of control, intimidation, and manipulation. He treated his subordinates with disrespect and targeted individuals to maintain a perceived sense of dictatorial authority. Sergeant Silva discriminated against pregnant female subordinates in the form of micromanaging, threats of being moved from the station, and painting pregnancy in a negative light, end quote. So he's a scumbag. But let's make sure we give credit to Anthony Ray, who now works at Sandak, and credit to Kelly Martinez, who lied about how she would release sealed records. And Laney got Tara good. So talk to you guys tomorrow. These are horrible cases. You need to do something about it. It's ridiculous.
Thank you. Now hear from the final caller.
You know, it's sad because there's all these cases that come up against, you know, the city or the county, and, you know, the people are, you're using the people's money to fight cases against them. And, you know, you guys are sitting here determining what may be or may be lawful or not. And, you know, we have all of these officers abusing their authority, and these people are trying to, you know, redress that and get some kind of justice, and it doesn't come. And it's so sad because it's like, you know, there's all these boards that come forward to try and, like, mitigate certain things. But when you can't hold these people accountable for the things that they're doing, and then when the people try to not only hold them accountable and they can't, but they do it through these means of going to court, you guys are using our own money to fight against them. And so how is that anybody ever going to get justice when, you know, the public is funding for that never to happen, for you guys to ensure that you win, for you to ensure that you have the best attorneys on your side so that, you know, the people get screwed over. And, you know, it's just very sad because we're in a place where, you know, you can't, you know, have these police officers or these jails do the right thing. You know, they want to, you know, criminalize the criminals, but these people are the ones engaging in nefarious things in these jails and or bringing in drugs and, you know, causing these people to lose their lives, and nothing gets done about it. And it's just sad because it's like you guys sit here and, you know, profess that you're, you know, wanting to do such great things, but you let the people down every day when stuff like this comes forward. And, you know, you're litigating cases against the people that they're never going to be able to, you know, win or get any kind of justice or anything that's going to make things better. So, you know, it's just we need to quit.
Thank you. And Chairwoman Vargas, that concludes a request for public comment on the closed session matters.
We will proceed to our closed session, and today's session is adjourned.
The board will now recess into closed session to consider those matters listed under item 19 on today's agenda. If there are any reportable actions, they will be reported out during the planning and land use session of this meeting tomorrow, Wednesday, July 19th, 2023.
What time is it, bro?